The chamber was vast and circular, built from materials that seemed to shift colors in the light. Ambassador G1 stood at the center, her hands trembling slightly as she held the datapad containing Earth's defense. Around her, the 12 members of the Galactic Council sat on elevated platforms, looking down at her like judges from ancient times. She had been preparing this speech for 3 months. Every word mattered. Every gesture could mean the difference between peace and destruction. Honorable members of the Council, G1 began, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. Humanity stands accused of developing weapons that violate the concordat of peaceful expansion. We do not deny that these weapons exist, but we ask the Council to understand why we built them. The reptilian form of Speaker Vecthar leaned forward, his scales catching the light. You admit to the crime, then. This tribunal can conclude quickly. No, G1 said firmly. I admit to building defenses. For 5 years, our colony ships were attacked by pirates. We sent 43 requests for Council protection. We received no response. 300,000 humans died in those raids. We had children being taken as slaves. We had families watching their homes burn from orbit. What would you have us do? Die quietly? One of the insectoid council members clicked its mandibles. The concordat exists for a reason. If every species develops advanced weapons, the galaxy descends into chaos. Then where was the Council when chaos came to us? G1's voice rose. She knew she should stay calm, but the memory of those lost colonies burned in her mind. We followed every rule. We reported every attack. We begged for help. And you ignored us. Speaker Vecthar slammed his clawed hand on the desk. You dare accuse this Council of neglect? Perhaps that is the problem with humanity. You are too quick to anger, too aggressive, too unpredictable. The other Council members murmured in agreement. G1 felt her hope dying. They had already made their decision. This trial was just for show. High above the planet, Admiral Deho stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiant, watching the Council station through the view screen. His uniform was crisp, his gray hair cut military short. He had fought in 12 campaigns to protect human colonies. He had lost friends and crew members to those pirate raids. And now the galaxy's leaders sat in judgment of his people. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, Ambassador G1 is requesting emergency contact. Deho's jaw tightened. Put her through. G1's face appeared on the screen. She was trying to hide her tears. Admiral, they're not listening. I tried everything. I showed them the attack records, the casualty reports, the unanswered distress calls. Nothing matters to them. What's the verdict? Deho asked, though he already knew. Exile, G1 whispered. Complete exile from Council space. We have 30 cycles to evacuate all human worlds beyond the outer rim. Any ship that remains after the deadline will be destroyed. The bridge went silent. Officers stared at their screens in shock. One young ensign put his hand over his mouth. Deho closed his eyes for a moment. 3 billion humans. 17 colony worlds. Earth itself. All to be abandoned. How far beyond the rim? They didn't specify, G1 said. Just beyond all mapped space. Into the dark zones where ships disappear. They're sending us to die, Admiral. They just don't want to be the ones pulling the trigger. We'll survive, Deho said, forcing strength into his voice. Humanity always survives. Get back to the ship, Ambassador. We have work to do. The evacuation began within hours. Captain Hyunwoo commanded the transport ship Rising Dawn, one of hundreds tasked with moving civilians off Earth. He was young for a captain, only 32, but he had proven himself capable in the pirate conflicts. He stood in the docking bay of New Seoul Station, watching families board his ship. Parents carried sleeping children. Elderly couples held hands, looking back at Earth one last time through the station windows. Everyone was allowed 2 bags of personal belongings. Everything else had to be left behind. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, stopped in front of Hyunwoo. She clutched a stuffed animal and looked up at him with large eyes. Captain, are we coming back? Hyunwoo knelt down to her level. I don't know, little one. But wherever we go together. All of humanity together. The girl nodded and followed her mother onto the ship. Hyunwoo watched them go, then looked out at Earth. The blue and green planet that had been humanity's home for millions of years. The cradle of their civilization. And now they were being forced to abandon it because they dared to defend themselves. He made a promise in that moment. Silent, but absolute. Humanity would return. He didn't know when or how, but they would return. And the galaxy would see what humans could become when pushed to the edge. The 30 cycles passed in a blur of activity. Admiral Daiho coordinated the largest evacuation in human history. Every ship that could fly was pressed into service. Colony ships, military vessels, mining transports, even luxury yachts. Everything became part of the Exodus fleet. Some colonists refused to leave. They barricaded themselves in their homes, insisting they would not be driven away. Council enforcement ships arrived on day 29 and bombarded those settlements from orbit. 50,000 humans who chose to stay died in fire and explosions. The message was clear. The Council's mercy had limits. On the 30th cycle, the last human ship crossed beyond the outer rim. Captain Hyunwoo stood at his viewport, watching the boundary markers fade behind them. Ahead lay only darkness. Sensors showed nothing but empty space for thousands of light years. No habitable planets, no resources, no shelter. Admiral Daiho sent a message to the entire fleet. 3,000 ships, 3 billion people, all listening to their commander's words. People of Earth and all human colonies, Daiho said. Today we leave behind everything we built. Our homes, our history, our place in the galaxy. The Council believes this is our end. They believe we will scatter and die in the darkness. They are wrong. He paused, looking into the camera with fierce determination. We are humanity. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived wars and disasters. We crawled from caves to reach the stars, and now we will do what we do best. We will adapt. We will survive. And one day when we are ready, we will return, not as the weak civilization they exiled, but as something stronger, something they never imagined we could become. This is not our end, Daiho continued. This is our beginning. The galaxy wanted us gone. Let them have their wish. We will build something new in the darkness, something magnificent, and when we come back they will see what humanity truly is. The transmission ended. The fleet moved forward into unexplored space. Behind them, the galaxy they knew disappeared from view. Ahead, only unknown dangers and an uncertain future awaited, but humanity carried something the Council could never take away. They carried their will to survive, their ability to adapt, and most dangerous of all, they carried their memory of this injustice. Every person on every ship would remember this day, and their children would remember, and their grandchildren. The Galactic Council had made humanity their enemy. They just didn't know it yet. The first year in the Dark Zones killed more humans than all the pirate raids combined. The fleet had brought supplies for 6 months, hoping to find habitable worlds quickly. But the darkness held nothing. Empty systems, dead rocks, gas giants with poisonous atmospheres. Week after week, the survey teams found nothing that could support human life. Food rationing began on day 43. Children cried with hunger while parents gave them their portions. Water recyclers began failing on older ships. People died of thirst. The medical ships overflowed with sick and dying. Fleet Admiral Minho, who had taken command after Admiral Daiho's death from exhaustion, stood on the bridge of the flagship watching casualty reports scroll past. 20,000 dead this week, 35,000 the week before. The numbers climbed every day. Admiral, his science officer said quietly, we're losing people faster than they're being born. If this continues for another year, we'll be below 2 billion. In 5 years, we might not have enough people to maintain the fleet. Minho stared at the view screen showing the vast emptiness ahead. Then we have 5 years to find hope. Send every available survey ship forward. Maximum range. I don't care if they have to jump blind into unknown space. We need a home. On day 78, a survey ship called Pathfinder found something. A system with 3 planets, one in the habitable zone. The planet had water, breathable atmosphere, and no hostile life forms. It wasn't paradise, but it was survival. The fleet changed course. It took 2 months to reach the system. By the time they arrived, another 100,000 had died. But the sight of that blue and green planet brought tears to eyes that had forgotten how to cry. They named it New Haven. Colony leader Bonhwa took charge of establishing the first settlement. He was a former construction manager who had become a leader through pure necessity. He organized the landing parties, assigned shelter priorities, and made the hard decisions about who got resources first. Children and pregnant women first, Bonhwa ordered, then the sick and elderly. After that, the workers. We need to build infrastructure. Everyone else waits their turn. Some people complained. Some tried to push ahead in line. Bonhwa had to make examples. 3 men who tried to steal food rations were exiled into the wilderness. They died within days. After that, people followed the rules. The settlement grew slowly. Prefabricated structures from the colony ships formed the core of the first town. Farms were planted. Wells were dug. Solar panels converted the system's star into power. After 6 months, New Haven had 15,000 permanent residents and was producing enough food to feed itself. But the rest of the fleet still struggled. 200 ships had been lost to mechanical failures. 30 more had disappeared during jumps into unknown space. The population continued to fall. That's when Chief Scientist Yoonji made her discovery. Yoonji had been studying the strange physics of the dark zones. Space didn't behave the same way here. Light traveled differently. Energy readings showed impossible values. Conventional science said none of it should work. But Yoonji had stopped trusting conventional science. She worked in a converted cargo bay that served as her laboratory. Her team of 12 scientists ran experiments that would have been illegal in council space. They pushed reactors beyond safe limits. They tested weapons that bent reality. They explored physics that the Galactic Council had declared too dangerous. "Look at this," Yoonji said, pointing at her display. Her eyes were bright with excitement despite the exhaustion on her face. In normal space, faster-than-light travel requires connection to the Council's jump gate network. But here the dimensional barriers are thinner. We can punch through space itself without external gates. Her assistant, a young physicist named Taman, studied the numbers. "That's impossible. The energy requirements would destroy any ship." "Not if we harvest dark matter," Yoonji explained. "The dark zones are full of it. We can build reactors that pull energy directly from the fabric of space. We don't need antimatter fuel anymore. We don't need anything the Council controls." Within a year, Yoonji's team had built the first independent jump drive. The prototype ship made a jump of 50 light-years without using any gate. It worked. Humanity no longer needed the Council's infrastructure to travel between stars. But Yoonji didn't stop there. Her team developed energy shields that could deflect weapons the Council considered unstoppable. They created sensors that could see through stealth technology. They built weapons that could crack a planet's crust. General Soo-hyun watched the weapons demonstration with satisfaction. A test beam struck an asteroid and turned it into dust in 3 seconds. "How many of these can we build?" "As many as we have ships for," Yoonji replied. "The dark matter is unlimited out here. We can outfit the entire fleet within 2 years. Soo-hyun had been a young officer during the exile. Now he was the military leader of humanity's scattered civilization. He had spent 10 years planning for the day humanity would return to Council space. Every simulation he ran showed the same result. Humanity would lose a straight fight against the Council's combined fleets. But with Yoonji's technology, the simulations changed. Humanity's ships would be faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses stronger. For the first time since the exile, victory seemed possible. "We need more than weapons," Fleet Admiral Minho said during the command meeting. "We need infrastructure, industry, a real civilization." "Then we expand," Banwa suggested. "We found 16 more habitable systems in the dark zones. We can establish colonies on all of them, spread humanity across dozens of worlds so we can never be threatened with extinction again." The expansion began. Colony ships launched to new systems every month. Each planet was different. Some had harsh climates. Others had dangerous native life. But humanity adapted to each one. They learned to live in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. They built cities underground and in the clouds of gas giants. By year 20 of the exile, humanity controlled 23 star systems. Their population had stabilized at 2.5 billion. It was still less than they started with, but the dying had stopped. People were having children again. Hope was returning. Captain Hyunwoo, now a senior commander in the Void Fleet, visited New Haven to see how far they had come. The small settlement he remembered had grown into a city of 2 million. Towers reached toward the sky. Ships came and went from orbital stations. Children who had never seen Earth played in parks, their laughter filling the air. An old woman approached him in the market district. She looked familiar, but Hyunwoo couldn't place her face. "You don't remember me," she said with a gentle smile. "My daughter and I were on your ship during the evacuation." She asked if we would ever return home. Hyunwoo remembered the little girl with the stuffed animal. "Is she here?" "She's a pilot now," the woman said proudly. "Flying scouts along the border. She wants to be there when we go back." "We're not ready yet," Hyunwoo said carefully. "But we will be," the woman replied. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of absolute faith. Hyunwoo nodded. Yes, we will be. By year 50, humanity had 40 systems. By year 70, they had reached 80 systems. The dark zones that were meant to be humanity's grave had become their empire. Every world they settled made them stronger. Every year brought new technology. Fleet Admiral Minho, now an old man, stood before the Human Imperial Assembly on New Haven. This was the government they had built from nothing. Representatives from every colony world gathered to make decisions for their species. We've survived 100 years in exile, Minho said. We've grown from refugees into an empire. But we've never forgotten where we came from. We've never forgotten what was taken from us. The time has come to decide our future. Do we remain here hidden in the darkness, or do we return to the galaxy and reclaim our place? The vote was unanimous. Humanity would return, but they would return on their own terms. They would return with power the Council couldn't imagine. They would return as an empire. Preparations began immediately. The Void Fleet, now 500 warships strong, prepared for deployment. Scout ships were sent to the border to map Council defenses. Intelligence officers studied Council politics, looking for weaknesses. Chief Scientist Yunji, though retired, was called back to oversee final weapons development. She walked through laboratories where scientists half her age worked on projects that would change the balance of galactic power. Are we ready? Her old assistant Taemin asked. Yunji looked at the display showing humanity's military strength. The Council thinks we're dead. They stopped watching the borders decades ago. They've grown comfortable, weak, yes, we're ready. But the real question is whether the galaxy is ready for us. The fleet gathered at the edge of the dark zones. 500 warships, 2,000 support vessels, 30 million personnel. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. And at the center of it all, Fleet Admiral Minho gave the order that would change everything. All ships, prepare for jump. We're going home. Admiral Threndix of the Chitauri Collective was having a boring day. Border patrol in the Outer Rim sectors was the assignment nobody wanted. Nothing ever happened here, just empty space and the occasional asteroid to scan. He had been doing this for 30 years and had never encountered anything interesting. His sensor officer suddenly straightened in her seat. Admiral, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures. Sector 779. It's not matching anything in our database. Threndix felt a small flutter of interest. Probably just a natural phenomenon. These outer sectors have unstable physics sometimes. But let's investigate anyway. Set course. The patrol fleet of 12 ships moved toward the energy signature. As they approached, the readings got stranger. The sensors showed ripples in space that shouldn't exist. Energy patterns that defied conventional physics. Admiral, the sensor officer said, her voice uncertain, I think there's a ship there. But it's not using any propulsion system I recognize. It's just sitting in space, but the energy output is massive. Hail them, Threndix ordered. Standard greeting protocol. The communications officer sent the message in Galactic Standard. For a long moment there was no response. Then the view screen activated, and Threndix found himself looking at a creature he had only seen in history files. A human. Captain Yuna smiled at him from the screen. She wore a uniform of dark blue with silver insignia. Behind her, the bridge of her ship was sleek and advanced, filled with technology that looked nothing like Council designs. This is Captain Yuna of the Human Stellar Empire scout ship Horizon's Edge, she said in perfect Galactic Standard. Greetings, Admiral Threndix of the Chitauri Collective. It's been a while since our people spoke, hasn't it? Threndix felt his mandibles lock in shock. Humans, the species that had been exiled 100 years ago. Everyone assumed they had died in the dark zones. That was the point of exile, after all. Sent them where they couldn't survive. This is impossible, Threndix whispered. Many things are possible when you're fighting for survival, Yuna replied calmly. Admiral, I'm going to send you some coordinates. Please inform the Galactic Council that humanity requests a formal meeting to discuss our return to Council space. We come in peace, but we come prepared. Before Threndix could respond, his sensors screamed warnings. His tactical officer shouted in panic. Admiral, ships are appearing all around us. I count 30 contacts. They just appeared from nowhere, no jump gates, no warning. The view screen split to show external view. Threndix saw the human ships and felt his blood run cold. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, sleek hulls that seemed to absorb light, weapons that glowed with strange energy, and they had surrounded his entire patrol fleet without triggering a single early warning system. Commander Taeyong's face appeared on another screen. He was older than Captain Yuna, with gray at his temples and the bearing of someone who had seen real combat. "Admiral Threndix, my name is Commander Tae-young. I lead this reconnaissance fleet. No one needs to get hurt today. We're simply making a point. Humanity has returned to the galaxy. We suggest the Council prepare for negotiations." "The Council will never accept this," Threndix said, trying to sound confident despite his fear. "You were exiled. The ruling stands. 100 years ago, the Council exiled 3 billion desperate refugees," Tae-young said quietly. "Today you face 5 billion citizens of an empire with technology you don't understand and military force you haven't measured. Tell your Council leaders that things have changed." Captain Yuna's ship began moving, and Threndix's sensors showed it accelerating impossibly fast. Within seconds, it had traveled a distance that should have taken hours. The other human ships followed, and then they were gone, vanished into space without using any jump gate. Threndix sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where the human fleet had been. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders. He took a deep breath and activated the emergency communication channel to Council headquarters. "This is Admiral Threndix to Council Command. Priority Alpha transmission. We have encountered the humans. I repeat, we have encountered humans in Council space. They have returned, and they have brought an empire with them." The message reached the Galactic Council within hours. Speaker Alindra, who had replaced the deceased Vecthar decades ago, called an emergency session. The 12 council members gathered, their faces showing various degrees of shock and concern. "This must be some kind of trick," said the Viridian representative, a younger member of the species that had pushed hardest for human exile. "Humans cannot have survived in the dark zones. The math doesn't work. They had no resources, no habitable worlds, no support infrastructure. And yet Admiral Threndix's sensor logs show 30 ships with technology beyond our understanding," Ilindra replied. "Ships that can jump without gates. Ships that can mask their presence from our best sensors. Either we are dealing with humans who have advanced far beyond us, or we are dealing with someone else using human appearance to deceive us." A crystalline being named Six spoke up. "I suggest we accept their request for meeting. If they are truly humans, we need to understand their intentions. If they are imposters, we need to expose them. Either way, refusing contact serves no purpose." The debate lasted for hours. Some council members wanted immediate military response. Others urged caution. Finally, they voted to send an official delegation to meet with human representatives at a neutral location. Chancellor Mion received the council's message in her office on New Haven. She was the elected leader of the Human Imperial Assembly, a former colony administrator who had risen through politics rather than military service. She read the council's agreement to meet and allowed herself a small smile. "They're scared," she said to her advisors. "Good. Fear breeds caution. Caution prevents stupid mistakes. Some of them will want war," warned her military advisor. "Especially the Viridians. They've built their power on the assumption that humanity was gone forever. Then we'll have to convince them that war is suicide," Mion replied. She activated her communication system and recorded a message to be delivered to every council member. Her face appeared on screens across council space. "I am Chancellor Mayan of the Human Stellar Empire. 100 years ago, your predecessors exiled my people for the crime of self-defense. They sent us to die in the darkness beyond all known space. We did not die. We survived. We adapted. We thrived." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We have built an empire of 87 star systems. We have developed technology that surpasses council achievements. We have a population of 5 billion and military strength that would surprise you. But we do not seek revenge. We seek recognition. We seek the right to exist in the galaxy of our birth. We seek justice for the past and peace for the future. The Council may accept our return peacefully, or they may choose conflict. But understand this. We are not the desperate refugees you exiled. We are not weak. We are not afraid. And we will not be pushed aside again. Choose wisely." The message ended. Across the galaxy, billions of aliens watched it and tried to understand what it meant. The humans were back. The species that was supposed to be extinct had returned as an empire. And nobody knew what would happen next. On Earth, which had been resettled by other species after the human exile, the new inhabitants watched the sky nervously. Rumors spread that humans would reclaim their homeworld by force. Some aliens fled. Others prepared to defend their adopted home. Commander Taeyong stood on his flagship's bridge watching Earth on the view screen. He had been born on that planet. He was 40 years old when the exile happened. Now he was 140, kept alive by medical advances developed in the dark zones. He had spent a century dreaming of seeing Earth again. "Do we have permission to approach?" his communications officer asked. "Not yet," Taeyong said quietly. "The Council is still debating whether we have the right to exist." Let them debate. Let them worry. Let them realize that the galaxy changed while they weren't paying attention. Captain Yuna joined him at the viewport. "My grandmother told me stories about Earth, green forests, blue oceans, cities that reached the clouds. Do you think it's still beautiful?" "I don't know," Taeyong admitted. "But we'll see it again. We came back not just to reclaim what was taken, but to prove that humanity cannot be erased. The Council tried to write us out of history. They failed." Throughout Council space, military forces went on alert. Fleets that had been scattered across normal patrol routes gathered at strategic points. Weapon systems that hadn't been fired in decades were brought online and tested. Ancient defense platforms were reactivated. The galaxy prepared for the possibility of war. But nobody really knew what they were preparing for. The human ships had shown capabilities that defied understanding. Their numbers were unknown. Their true strength remained a mystery. And that uncertainty was humanity's greatest weapon. The Council had grown comfortable over 100 years of unchallenged authority. They had forgotten what it meant to face an unknown threat. They had forgotten the fear of being on the defensive. Now they remembered. And that fear would shape everything that came next. The neutral station Concordia floated in the empty space between Council territory and the dark zones. It had been built in just 3 weeks. A joint construction project that proved both sides could cooperate when necessary. The station was simple: meeting rooms, living quarters, and nothing else. No weapons, no military equipment, just a place to talk. Diplomat Jeho arrived with a small delegation. He carried an old data pad that had belonged to his mother, Ambassador Ji-won. She had died 20 years into the exile, her heart broken by the injustice she couldn't prevent. Jeho had been 10 years old during the evacuation. Now he was 110, his life extended by the medical technology humanity had developed in isolation. He walked through the station's corridor and entered the main meeting room. 12 council representatives waited for him, seated at a curved table. Their faces showed emotions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "I am Diplomat Jeho, representing the human stellar empire," he said calmly. "I come with a simple message. Humanity wishes to return to the galaxy. We ask for recognition as a sovereign empire, the return of our original 17 colony worlds, and permanent representation on the Galactic Council." The Viridian representative hissed. "You ask for what you do not deserve. The exile ruling stands. You were judged guilty of violating the Concordat. That judgment does not expire." Jeho placed his mother's datapad on the table. "This contains my mother's final plea to the Council." She presented evidence that the weapons charges were false. She showed that humanity built defenses only after the Council ignored our calls for help. She died believing that justice would eventually prevail. I'm here to see if she was right. Speaker Alindra studied Jeho carefully. "Even if we accept that the original ruling was unjust, 100 years have passed. New species have settled on your former worlds. The galaxy has reorganized itself around your absence. We cannot simply undo everything because you survived against expectations." "Then let me make the situation clear," Jeho replied. "Humanity is not requesting permission to exist. We are informing you that we exist. We control 87 star systems. We have technology superior to Council standard. We have military force sufficient to defend our interests. You can accept this reality peacefully, or we can demonstrate it forcefully. The choice is yours." The room erupted in angry voices. Several representatives shouted about threats and blackmail. Others called for immediate military response. Alindra had to call for order 3 times before the chaos settled. While negotiations continued inside Concordia, Fleet Marshal Nari conducted what she called training exercises near Council borders. Her fleet of 200 warships performed maneuvers that Council observers found deeply disturbing. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. They demonstrated the ability to jump in and out of normal space without warning. Their weapons fired beams that passed through conventional shields like they weren't there. Their sensors tracked Council observation ships that were supposed to be invisible. One council admiral sent an urgent message to headquarters after watching the exercises. These humans are not just advanced, they've developed an entirely different approach to warfare. Our standard tactics would be useless against them. If war comes, I don't know if we can win. The message was leaked within days. Panic spread through council space. Stock markets crashed. 3 smaller species began secret negotiations with humanity, offering alliance against Viridian dominance. The unified council that had exiled humanity a century ago started to crack under pressure. Inside the human empire, debates raged about the proper course of action. Warmaster Kyung-ho led the hardline faction. He was a combat veteran who had fought in the defense of human colonies before the exile. He lost his wife and children to pirate raids that the council ignored. His hatred of the galactic government ran deep. They murdered 800 million of us, Kyung-ho said during a session of the Imperial Assembly. They exiled us to die. They took our worlds and gave them to others. And now we're supposed to negotiate politely? We should demand reparations, territory, payment in resources for every human who died because of their injustice. Ambassador Heejin represented the peaceful faction. She was younger, born in exile with no memory of council space. War serves no purpose except to prove we're as cruel as they feared. We survived. We thrived. We became strong. That's victory enough. Now we should focus on building a better future, not avenging the past. Easy to say when you never watched your family burn, Kyung-ho shot back. Some debts must be paid in blood. Chancellor Myeon listened to both sides and tried to find a middle path. She knew that Kyung-ho's anger represented real pain felt by millions of exile survivors. But she also knew that Ambassador Heejin spoke for the younger generation who wanted to move forward. The decision she made would define humanity's role in the galaxy for centuries. The Cold War escalated when Viridian military forces attacked a disputed system that humans had colonized during their exile. The system was technically in the dark zones beyond council space, but the Viridians claimed it fell under their historical exploration rights. 30,000 human colonists died in the orbital bombardment. Farms and settlements burned. Ships trying to evacuate were destroyed. It was a deliberate massacre designed to send a message. Humans would not be tolerated anywhere. Warmaster Kyung-ho demanded immediate retaliation. We must respond with overwhelming force. Show them that human blood has a price they cannot afford. But Fleet Marshal Nari had a different idea. We respond with precision, not rage. We show them that we could destroy them completely but choose restraint. That will frighten them more than any rampage. 3 days after the Viridian attack, Marshal Nari's fleet appeared in Viridian home space, not around their military bases or industrial worlds, but directly above their most populated planet. 5 billion Viridians looked up at the sky and saw human warships that had somehow bypassed every defense system. The Viridian military scrambled to respond, but before they could launch a single fighter, the human fleet executed their plan. They identified and targeted only the military vessels that had participated in the colony massacre. Precise beam weapons reached down from orbit and destroyed 17 Viridian warships docked at various ports around the planet. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the human ships vanished. No civilians harmed. No infrastructure destroyed. Just the guilty ships turned to debris. Marshal Nari sent a message to the Viridian High Command. We could have cracked your planet like an egg. We could have killed billions. We chose not to. Remember that choice when you consider your next move. The precision strike shocked the entire galaxy. Council military analysts studied the footage obsessively. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that seemed impossible. They bypassed defenses that were supposed to be impenetrable. They struck with accuracy that suggested intelligence gathering far beyond council abilities. And they showed restraint that made them seem reasonable rather than vengeful. It was a perfect display of power tempered with mercy. And it terrified the council more than threats ever could. The attack also changed the negotiation dynamic. Moderate council members found their voices amplified. The humans could have started a war. They chose not to. That shows they genuinely want peace, not conquest. Even some Viridian representatives began quietly suggesting compromise. Their military leadership had reviewed the tactical data and reached a sobering conclusion. Humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the council could do to stop them. Diplomat Jae-ho returned to the negotiation table with new proposals. Humanity will accept a compromise. We don't demand all our old colonies back. We ask for Earth and 5 key systems. We will compensate current residents fairly for relocation. In exchange, we want full council membership with equal voting rights and a formal apology for the unjust exile. And if we refuse? Asked a council member. Then we return to our territory and close our borders, Jeho said calmly. You'll never see our technology. Never benefit from our trade. Never have access to the resources we've discovered in the dark zones. And you'll always wonder when we might decide to stop being patient. It wasn't quite a threat. It wasn't quite a promise. It was simply a statement of options. The negotiations dragged on for months. Every detail was debated. Every word was analyzed. But slowly, grudgingly, an agreement took shape. The Council would acknowledge humanity's return. Earth and 3 colony systems would be returned to human control. Humanity would gain Council membership. And in exchange, humans would share some of their advanced technology and open trade routes into the dark zones. But the most important part of the agreement was what wasn't written down. An understanding developed between pragmatic leaders on both sides. Humanity had proven they could be dangerous but chose to be peaceful. The Council had learned that exiling a species didn't make them disappear. It just made them angry and innovative. War Master Kyung-ho was not satisfied. We should demand more. We have the power to take everything we want. But Chancellor Mion overruled him. Power without purpose is just violence. We came back to reclaim our place, not to become the tyrants we opposed. This agreement isn't perfect, but it's a beginning. Emperor Junho stood at the viewport of his shuttle as it descended toward Earth. He was the first elected emperor of humanity, chosen by the Imperial Assembly to lead during this critical transition. Once he had been a fleet admiral commanding warships in the dark zones. Now he wore ceremonial robes and carried the weight of 5 billion human lives on his shoulders. Earth grew larger in the viewport. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. The cradle of humanity returned at last. Your Majesty, his aide said quietly. The welcome ceremony is ready. Representatives from every council species are waiting. Junho nodded but said nothing. He was thinking about all the humans who died in exile, never seeing this moment. His parents. His siblings. Hundreds of millions who perished in the dark years when humanity struggled just to survive. This moment was for them as much as for the living. The shuttle landed in what had been New Seoul, now temporarily renamed Unity City for the return ceremony. Junho stepped out onto Earth soil for the first time in over a century. The ground felt solid under his feet. Real. Home. Speaker Alindra waited at the base of the shuttle ramp. The crystalline being's facets caught the sunlight, creating rainbow patterns on the ground. Emperor Junho, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity home. Thank you, Speaker, Junho replied formally. May this return mark a new era of cooperation for all species. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as humans reclaimed their homeworld. Some viewers felt joy at the reconciliation. Others felt unease at humanity's power. And a few felt something darker, guilt. Director Suman felt that guilt deeply. She led Human Intelligence Services, the organization responsible for gathering information about the galaxy during the exile. For years, her agents had been infiltrating council space, collecting data, watching for threats. And during that time, they had discovered something terrible. 3 days after the return ceremony, Suman requested a private meeting with Emperor Junho. They met in a secure room in the temporary palace, away from recording devices and listening ears. Your Majesty, Suman said, placing a data drive on the table between them. My agents have uncovered evidence about the original exile. The weapons charges that justified sending us away. They were fabricated. Junho felt ice in his stomach. Explain. Viridian intelligence planted the prohibited weapons on human colonies, Suman continued. They created false records. They manipulated evidence. The entire case against humanity was a lie designed to justify exile, and several council members knew about it. They knew we were innocent and they exiled us anyway. Junho picked up the data drive with trembling hands. How certain are you? Completely certain. We have communications between Viridian officials discussing the operation. We have testimony from a former agent who participated. We have technical analysis proving the weapons were Viridian in origin. Your Majesty, they murdered 800 million humans based on a deliberate lie. The Emperor sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Who else knows about this? Only my senior staff. I came to you first because this decision must be yours. We can release this evidence publicly and demand justice, or we can keep it secret and maintain the fragile peace we just achieved. Justice, Junho said slowly. Or peace. Why can't we have both? Suman shook her head. If we expose this conspiracy, the Viridian Empire will collapse. Their government will fall. Millions of Viridians who had nothing to do with the crime will suffer, and the Council itself might fracture completely. We could get justice and lose the galaxy to chaos. Junho stood and walked to the window. Outside, humans and aliens mingled in the streets, celebrating the return. A Viridian child held hands with a human child, both laughing at something. That child wasn't born when the conspiracy happened. Neither was the human. They were innocent. I need time to think, Junho said. Keep this information secure. Tell no one else. I'll decide what to do. While Junho wrestled with his decision, the galaxy began integrating humanity back into its civilization. Human ships started using Council trade routes. Human scientists joined research projects. Human artists shared their culture developed during a century of isolation. Captain Hyunwoo, now an aging admiral, visited Earth with a group of young officers. Among them was Lieutenant Hajun, a bright young man born on New Haven who had never seen Earth until now. This is where humanity began, Hyunwoo said as they stood in a park overlooking the ocean. Millions of years ago, our ancestors climbed down from trees right here. And 100 years ago, we were forced to leave it all behind. Why did we come back? Hajun asked. We had our own empire in the dark zones. We were doing well there. Why risk everything to return to a galaxy that hated us? Hyunwoo smiled at the question. Because exile made us strong, but it also made us lonely. We survived by ourselves for a century, but humans aren't meant to be alone. We need connection, community. Even with those who wronged us, coming back isn't about revenge. It's about remembering that we're part of something larger than ourselves. But not everyone shared Hyunwoo's peaceful philosophy. War Master Kyungho continued to push for a harder line against the Council. He gathered supporters among the older generation, those who remembered the exile personally and carried deep scars from it. We're being too soft, Kyungho told his followers. The Council destroyed our civilization, and we're treating them like friends. Where is the justice for our dead? Where is the payment for our suffering? Emperor Junho heard these complaints. He understood them. Part of him agreed with them. And then Director Suman came to him again with more information. Your Majesty, we've discovered something else. The conspiracy wasn't limited to the Viridians. 5 other council members knew about the false evidence. They approved the exile knowing humanity was innocent. They chose to maintain political stability over justice. Give me names, Junho said quietly. Suman listed them. 3 were retired. 1 was dead, but 1 was still on the council. A representative from a species called the Morphani, a peaceful race known for their philosophical wisdom. Junho made his decision. He couldn't ignore the conspiracy, but he wouldn't let it destroy the fragile peace. There was a middle path. He called for a special session of the Galactic Council. Every representative attended, curious about what the human emperor wanted to discuss. Junho stood before them with Director Suman's evidence displayed on screens for all to see. 100 years ago, this council exiled humanity based on charges of weapons violations, Junho began. We've discovered that those charges were fabricated. The weapons were planted. The evidence was false. Several council members knew this and approved the exile anyway. Shock rippled through the chamber. The Viridian representative went pale. The Morphani delegate closed their many eyes in shame. Other representatives shouted denials and questions. I could demand reparations, Junho continued. I could seek punishment for those responsible. I could use this revelation to destroy the council completely. But I'm not going to do any of those things. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for the Emperor's next words. Instead, I'm proposing something different. The old Concordat failed because it gave too much power to too few members. It allowed injustice because there were no checks on council authority. So let's build something new. A new Concordat where every member species has equal voice. Where exile requires unanimous agreement and proof beyond doubt. Where justice is transparent and power is distributed. Speaker Elindra stepped forward. You're suggesting we dissolve the current council structure completely. I'm suggesting we evolve it, Junho replied. Keep what works. Fix what doesn't. Create a galactic government that prevents the mistakes of the past, not through force but through wisdom, not through fear, but through cooperation. The Morphani representative spoke up, their voice heavy with guilt. Why would you offer us this mercy? We participated in your destruction. Because mercy builds civilizations, Junho said simply. Revenge only builds graves. My people suffered terribly from this council's injustice. 800 million humans died in exile. But they died so humanity could survive and return stronger. If I use their deaths as justification for more death, I dishonor their sacrifice. The Viridian Empire must still face consequences, Junho continued, looking directly at the Viridian representative. You will formally admit your conspiracy. You will pay reparations to humanity over the next century. Your military will be reduced for 20 years, but you will not be destroyed. You will have the chance to rebuild your honor through time and action. The Viridian representative, a younger member who had not been part of the conspiracy, nodded slowly. We accept these terms, and we apologize for the crimes of our predecessors. Over the next 6 months, the new concordat was written and approved. It restructured galactic governance completely. No single species could dominate. Decisions required broad consensus. Rights were protected. Justice was reformed. Humanity played a central role in designing the new system, and that role came with responsibility. Emperor Junho announced that humanity would share its advanced technology with all council members. The jump drives that didn't need gates, the shields that bent physics, the medical advances that extended life.